Morning. Sorry, Electron Ash. Need to move to Australia. Then the time zone will be perfect for you. Morning, Gregor. Hey, Michael. 7:30 Coco. Wow, how old are you, Electron Ash? 7:30 PM's nothing. Come on. Stay awake. Stay awake, stay awake. So if you see me looking around like this in my office, it's because there's a mosquito in here. And I'm allergic to... Oh, it just flew past me. I'm allergic to mosquitoes. I get swollen when I get bitten. Not happy, really. Not happy that I'm sharing this stream today in my office. My workshop with a mozzie. Good morning, David. Hey, Julian. Hello, John. Didn't show up in your subscription feed. YouTube. The answer to all of life's questions. Unanswerable questions. YouTube. And Andy just posted on my Patreon page. Cool. 38. Ancient. Yeah, wow. Really ancient. Really. Yeah. You're a baby, mate. Hey, Paul. So this is an Aussie mozzie. Well, I think mosquitoes are pretty much mosquitoes, but yeah, I don't know. I do not like mosquitoes because, as I said, I get quite swollen when I get bitten. Hey, Tony. Hey, Andy. You appeared here and your Patreon message came through, although I haven't seen it yet. The lighting, I'm very not happy with the lighting in here. It looks very blown out. Hey, Dirk. Welcome. Let's see if I can do something with my camera lighting. Maybe just the contrast a bit. There we go. It's not bad. It's a bit better. 7:30 is BE time. There's been no snow. Ooh, well, it's going to be 37 today. We've had 33, 34, and today's going to be 37. And tomorrow's supposed to rain. So, that's Melbourne for you. Hello, Leo. So, for all the OCD people out there, I've managed to align my camera with the target right in the middle. I took a lot of care to do that, just for everyone, okay? Just letting you all know. I'm not always overly thoughtful. Sometimes I'm mostly forgetful, but there you go. So how's everyone doing? How's everyone been? We're a bit early still, only just 7 o'clock now. Just going to wait for a few more people to turn up. I've had a really terrible few days. Hey, Christian. Did everyone see my post on Twitter? And on my Patreon page, I'm going to change the name of my channel to the Misadventures of Sea on the Maker. Hey, Paul. 3 flakes of snow. 3 whole flakes. Did they melt before they hit the ground? Wow. 10 centimeters of snow in a couple of hours. I like the snow, but not for an extended period of time. I don't like being hot. I don't like being cold. Somewhere in between. Hey, Gert. I hope that's how I pronounce your name. If not, I apologise. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading chat. Yeah, it's nice to visit. I mean, obviously, I like skiing. I haven't skied for a few years, though, unfortunately. But I like skiing. Hello, Alan. Good morning. Yeah, try Sion. I get every pronunciation other than Sion. So, like, I feel for anyone that's got a name that's hard to pronounce. Yeah. Especially for those that aren't native speakers. But if I yeah, I might just call you G. I seem to abbreviate any name for anyone in the community that I can't pronounce properly. I'd rather give you a nickname that you don't have or like than mispronounce your name. Snow should be illegal. No, snow should be just snow in your neighbourhood, on your house, in your lawn should be illegal, maybe, but not snow as a tourist attraction. That's like saying beaches should be illegal. Nah. Well, actually, there's nothing like saying beaches should be illegal. I don't even know why I said that. It's not even close. Anyway, it's like saying the sun should be illegal. Have you ever been called Celine Dion? I have. I've been called it all. Don't you worry. It's like, how do you spell Alan? Alan's pretty generic, dude. You're just generic, Alan. Hey, Alex. Tiny LED matrix. How tiny is your matrix? That's what I really want to know. So, shall we get started? What? Try left. Is that your middle name? Andy. Hey, Mike. Hello. Wait, did John go past? John did go past. Hey, John, yeah, I saw your tweet this morning. Sorry I haven't replied. Yeah, I saw that the second revision, or revision 1 of LED Twee. How weird is that? So, for those of you that have seen my LED Twees, that's what I use my videos to stream sometimes. They're for picking up LEDs and power them with a battery. So the guy that made these is starting a new Kickstarter with a revised revision, which I'm not sure I'm going to get, because I'm not sure I like the look of, personally. But, let me pull out just a fraction. And so, interesting, because he's made this new Kickstarter, Revision 1, and he's calling these Revision 0. I would have thought this was Revision 1. When you ship something, it's a revision, isn't it? Anyway, hey Christian. Paul's easy enough, but all the Brits will understand. I'm sick of being called Taggart. I know what Taggart, the TV show, the cop show. Yeah, it's amazing how many English shows we get here and syndicated around the world. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get the new ones, John. They it looks like you might have solved the problem with the the tips. Like, these are a little inaccurate sometimes to grab with, just because they're PCB. They get a bit dirty and they're wearing out. But his new ones seem quite bulky, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll have another good look at them. Hey, Paul. Right, but when you ship something, so things don't normally ship as revision 0. Like, the first one that you ship is a revision 1, isn't it? I mean, forget about my naming schemes for my TinyPICO. I call these all revisions, but this is still, whatever this ships is going to be revision 1 of this board, like of TinyPICO. But my design revisions keep going up, sure. But I don't know, it seemed weird. Anyway, like, I didn't understand what he was saying. Like, you're announcing revision 1 of the LED Twee, and I think, hang on, I bought that ages ago. So let's get started, shall we? Well, maybe it shouldn't be called revision, it should be version. You don't normally have a version 0. I don't know. Just me. Must be an Australian thing. What can I tell you? So when I started, I'm just going to start, okay? Feel free to chat amongst yourselves or ask questions or not, or talk about anything you want. That's okay. Oh, by the way, everyone, it's a quick stream today. Seriously. I have to stop at 9 o'clock. Or before, but I have to stop at 9 o'clock. Yaz has to go out, and I'm on daddy duty. So, yep. Just let everyone know. If I get to 9 o'clock and I'm still yabbering away and I've forgotten, can someone remind me? Thank you. Okay, so when I started making the TinyPICO, let's get close again. Nice and close. Hopefully in focus. Yes. My plan was always to make more than one board. My plan through the whole process was always to leverage what I'm learning and parts I'm buying and the design to make potentially other things, because you can't make one board that works for everyone, and it's pointless trying. I had a lot of people, like I had a guy on the MicroPython forums that was complaining about the TinyPICO because you know, once you programmed it, what do you need the USB header for? So why don't you have one without a USB header? And you know, and why do the pins have to be like this? Like, you know, if someone's using it off a breadboard, why do they need breadboard pins and blah 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 blah, right? But by the same token, it's really frustrating to have a board that doesn't fit on a breadboard when you're trying to prototype. Because 9 o'clock, it's 8:10 now, yeah? What? No, 7:10, or in Australia, 7:08. So 2 hours, we've got plenty of time. Plenty of time for me to make a fool of myself. I forgot, I was in the middle of a sentence before. Anyway, so when I built TinyPICO, like my plan really was to try to make it as versatile as possible. It was designed to fit in a breadboard for those that want to do it. You can solder onto it if you want to. I personally hate getting a microcontroller and soldering directly onto it, especially when I'm prototyping. It's just me. I just the whole solder it on, take it off, solder it on, take it off. I tend to not go out. I mean, apart from D1 minis that I used a lot of, and nanos very early on, I tend to not buy a stack of one type of microcontroller. I like to reuse them. You know, I don't have dozens of feathers. I've got, you know, a couple of feathers, and I use them in different projects, and I use them on a breadboard. So that was really important for me. And the fact that I know you can do it over the air with these, but I really wanted to have the USB on there, the flexibility of the USB. And sure, once you take a board, like if someone wants to take a board like this and put it inside something, inside an enclosure, and use it in their house or whatever else for sensors or for web connectivity or whatever, that's fine. But once it's inside a box, who cares if it's got a USB or it's got broken out headers? So that was the plan with this. But and I think everyone will agree I did a pretty good job of squeezing a lot into such a small space. But my plan was to always make 3 boards. So obviously I've got my TinyPICO Nano, which I still don't know what I'm going to do with. I don't have a plan for it yet. I definitely need to make another revision. I want to move over to the new LDO that I'm using on this one. I want to use on here instead because it runs a little bit cooler, it's got a bit more headroom, bit more space on the board. And the other thing I want to do is just rethink not the castellated edges. I want to go castellated edges, but I want to, like, I need to ask myself, does it have to be that small? Does a module have to be that small? If it's going on another board, you know, if it's a few millimeters bigger, I mean, if you ask Matt, it needs to be smaller. Everything's got to be smaller. Smaller is better. But at the end of the day, it's got to be usable. And I'm still unsure about the programming header, the way I've done it. I'm thinking maybe, I do have my pen and paper here, just letting you all know, don't freak out. Like, I'm thinking with the Nano that maybe, if it was like obviously if it's going on a board, you can break out your own programming, right? But I'm thinking maybe if it was this size, I'm just going to trace it, oops, if I can. But if it was a little bit longer maybe, let's say, right? So more like that. And I put like maybe like a mezzanine connector on the end. You all know what a mezzanine connector is. Hey David, thanks for checking in. It's going to be a short stream today, 2 hours max, which for me is a short stream, as you know. Hope you're well, David. Chris, hello, you're awake. Woohoo. So yeah, I was thinking of putting a mezzanine connector on, maybe instead of doing the pins, and that way you can just lock a cable on. Or even sticking a really small header or something. I don't know. I don't mind the complexity of using my programmer like I've got. Of course, more changes, always changes. Hey, Taylortronics, that's me, right? See on change unexpected changes? No, expected changes. Anyway, so I'm still trying to work out ultimately what use this is, like who it's going to be useful for, in what market. I mean, it's not a hobbyist board. Like this to me is a hobbyist board. This is not a hobbyist board. So if it's not a hobbyist board, where am I targeting? And then what do I really need on it? Does that make sense? Right. Okay. Great. So, but there was always going to be another board. And, well, from very early on, there was discussions with Matt about another board. And the other board was supposed to have, I kept flip-flopping between another bigger board, and I'll explain why, or this and a board that this plugs into, right? The TinyPICO plugs into another board, and that other board has the other stuff. Hey Ben, good morning. 2 months later, TinyPICO revision will go to pre-production. Yeah, you joke about that, Chris, and I'm glad you think it's all funny. All of you think it's funny about my revisions and revisions and revisions. I don't. I would have liked TinyPICO to ship a while ago. You know, but you know, you all joke around at my expense, that's fine. I'm just kidding. It's all good. Ooh, coffee. So I've been flip-flopping around the idea of plugging this into something or making another board. And the reason was, both Matt and I think that MicroPython in the education space is a really important thing. It's, you know, MicroPython, CircuitPython, whatever, is a much more approachable platform for people getting into electronics and microcontrollers than Arduino and C and other stuff. And, you know, have you all seen a Circuit Playground? So maybe you were right, Michael. Maybe you were right. Let me just grab a Circuit Playground. Whoa. So, for those of you that don't know, this is Adafruit's. I mean, they designed this before CircuitPython, although they have a SP32 version of microbit would be good. In the microbit form factor, possibly, but there's a few people doing a microbit form factor now with different, like NRF chips and stuff. This is, I mean, obviously they were working on CircuitPython before they, you know, for a long time before they released it, possibly before they announced it. But this is the Circuit Playground Express. And this is specifically designed for education and schools, right? Because it's USB, it's got battery, it's a SAMD21 on here. They've got a whole bunch of RGB LEDs in a ring. They've got touch, like cap touch all around the edges, and alligator clips to connect it, so you don't have to do any soldering. And they've got a whole bunch of stuff on here. There's an amplifier, there's a microphone, there's a speaker, there's some sensors. It's basically an all-in-one board that is perfect for the education space, right? Wouldn't you make a bigger board for education? Who would ever use a super tiny board for education? Exactly. Right, I wouldn't make a super tiny board for education. This board here was never supposed to be for education, right? That's why there was always going to be 3 boards, or we were always discussing 3 boards. The 2 separate boards thing is why I quite like WIDI boards, although they're quite big. Yeah, the problem with the 2 separate boards thing is it makes everything quite bulky, right? So, you know, you need a solder headers on here, and then you need to have female headers to plug into. And then you know, if you think about it, you know, you've got a board in a board like that. And I've always been umming and ahhing about that, about how to do that, and then what happens. I mean, this board becomes useless. Not this one, but the extra board becomes useless when this plugs in, right? So I've always been flipping around between that or just making another board that's got, obviously, all the Pico stuff on there, right? So, I have a name for this board. I haven't made one. This is not a build video, right? I haven't made one. I have a name for this board. There's been a few people guessing. I know there's chat going. I'm ignoring the chat right now. And so, does anyone want to spend a couple of minutes trying to guess? There's a few people guess it. I think, hey Brian, I think Ben suggested, what was it? Did you do the something mega? The bigger mega or something? I don't know. I think Brian also guessed a name. Anyone? Right. Ben thinks it's the giant mega. It'd have to be pretty damn big to be a giant mega, I think. What's a great platform? What are we talking? Teletronics. Just, okay, anyway. Mega Pico. Okay. Mega Pico. Ample. Hey Don. Ample? I don't know what that is. Anyway, okay. So feather format. Yeah, I like the feather format. So, anyway, it's called, ready for this? TinyPICO Pro. We've got the TinyPICO, biggie smalls, TinyPICO Nano, and the TinyPICO Pro. Micro, Pico, yeah, nah, high end. Pico mini thingy. Anyway, I've called it TinyPICO Pro because it's going to be a pro board. And so let's have a look at what I started with, shall we? I've got a few things to show you. In Eagle. So now that you know the name, I can now show you the board. So the first thing I did, I know it's not up on the screen yet. It's coming. Wait a sec. It's pretty full on. Pro should be for professionals. Yes. Well, Apple would disagree, right? Ooh, and I'm an Apple Pro user. TinyPICO Pro, as a fellow Mac fanboy, I should have guessed. Yeah. Okay, desktop. Dun, dun, dun. So this is what I started with. Not finished. It's unrouted. Or some of it's unrouted. Let's see how close I can get and keep it on screen still. One sec. I might get rid of the bottom layer. Just distracted watching the EPL at the same time. I don't know what the EPL is. Sorry, Ian. Top. Okay. So, it's, as I said, I never routed it. Oh, you gotta go, Chris? Catch you later. Right. Keeping me on my toes, are you, Chris? Pico Colossus. Catch you later. Have a good day. Have a good sleep. I don't know if you're sleeping or working now. Either way, have a good one. Wow, I've got indigestion today. So, this board is my TinyPICO Pro. This is my first revision, which I never finished, right? I think it's using revision 6 layout, because that's when I reworked it. So we've got our we've got our Pico D4, we've got our USB, we've got our RAM on top. And then we've got, so using the old LDO, so I haven't even worked all this out, it's terrible. JST on the top, so it's all kind of the same, but what this has got on it at the moment is an IMU, so it's got a 650, a 6050. It's got a temperature sensor. Oh, bang! And let's go to the schematics actually. Maybe that'll be an easier thing to look at for you all. So we've got a 6050 MPU on here. We've got a TMP 1021, only because it's cheaper. You can get better ones, but with more precision. So it's got a temperature sensor, and it's got, although I won't be using the ALS, but it's got an ALS PT19, which is a light, like an ambient light sensor. So the idea was to make a board that had some other components on there, to make the board more useful. Like, I can't tell you how many times in my projects I've needed to connect an IMU to a board, and having to use a module is a pain. Having to then pick up a breadboard and rotate the breadboard or whatever. Like, there are plenty of applications I would use that if I had an IMU on my board, I would utilize it absolutely. There are stacks of applications I use that have got ambient light sensors. Like, almost all my RGB projects have got ambient light. Like, I put LDRs on them and stuff, and they're painful to connect and whatever. And sure, you get the ability to put the LDR where you want to put it, but an LDR is it's a poor man's light sensor. And so I thought, okay, this is where I started anyway, right? Like, why not build a board that has more on it? So out of the gate, you have more functionality, more things available, and less requirements to to solder modules on or stuff like that, right? I didn't want to completely just take everything that was on, let's say, a circuit playground. I don't want to necessarily, like, I don't know if I can compete in the education space. Like, getting into the education space is super hard. It's probably not something that I could ever achieve myself or even a group of people. An IMU, a gyro, accelerometer, The MPU 650's got I think it's a 6 DOF, or it could be 9 DOF. So you can, yeah, check rotation and angles and acceleration. There you go. Ben jumped in. Inertial measurement unit. So this is where I started playing around, and then it's large flightless bird from Australia. Right. And I was getting to the point where I was going to start routing this, and it's quite complex. And it's the same width as the TinyPICO, it's just longer. The idea was to still make a pretty small board, right? So if I just switch back to here, actually let's have a look at how long it is. Let me just go to the measurement tool. I can't remember how long I made it. I was pretty confident I could get this all on the board without making it any bigger. Oh, there you go. So it's 45 by 18. Well, let's call it 18. If anyone has questions for the pros, have a driver MOSFET for NeoPixels, if it's not already there. Hey David! A driver MOSFET. You mean to power NeoPixels? I mean, could do. The problem that I've seen with any like RGB LED driver boards that I've seen, and the size of the MOSFETs they're using, and with heat sinks and stuff, I'm not sure I'd be able to get one on. Oh, you mean level shifting, for level shifting. Right, okay, yes. So my thought was also at some point to stick level shifting on there and break out, you know, maybe put like an 8-way level shifter or a 6-way level shifter, six pin level shifter, and then break out some extra pins and make some pins 3 volt and some pins 5 volt and mark them on the board. Right? I actually thought about that. I actually bought some level shifters for another project, another ESP project that I was going to do something like that with, because I thought that was useful. Like now that all I/O on most boards have just gone 3.3 volts, like pretty much everyone is moving away slowly from 5 volts, except for Arduino, basic Arduino stuff. It would be useful, yes. So as you can see, like it was still going to be a fairly small board. Like if I switch back to here, if these are 10 centimeters each, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Like it would come to there, right? In terms of length, pretty small board still compared to something like this. Obviously, that's got stacks more on it. I get that. And then I thought to myself, well, what's the point? Like I've already designed a new form factor here. Micro SD card slot, everyone seems to add those. Yeah, micro SD and Pico is a problem right now with RAM. A Pico with extra RAM and micro SD is a problem because they share stuff. You need to do some low level code to be able to make that work. You need a switch, which is not something that most people are going to be able to do. So that really hasn't been. I think Rudy is the only person so far that's been playing around with trying to get both working. I don't know what the results on that are right now. So I've already like made a form factor here, and I like this form factor personally. I do. I hope that maybe other things, like I plan on doing other things with this form factor. But I didn't want to invent another form factor. So then it didn't occur to me. I was thinking about this from the start, but I wasn't sure it was worthwhile. Hey, Tabletronics. So this is a feather. You all know Adafruit feathers. Some of you might have some of you don't. It's become a standard now, this form factor. It's quite large, as you can see, considerably larger. It's 2 pin header rows wider than the TinyPICO, and it's almost twice as long as the TinyPICO. But it's become a standard. Adafruit, obviously, have got stacks of boards in the feather range, stacks of feather wings, which is their add-on boards. All the particle boards now are, well, they say they're feather compatible, but they're not quite pin for pin feather compatible, but they're in the feather form factor. And there are quite a lot of other boards being released in the feather form factor. And so I thought to myself, well, why would I make a board in the feather form factor when Adafruit already have their Huzzah 32, which is an ESP32 feather? But for me, I guess, the problem with the Feather, and maybe it's just because I'm in Australia and everything, I have to buy everything in US dollars and have to pay exorbitant shipping to get stuff here. But a lot of the functionality that I would want on a Feather, that I've wanted to use in the past on a Feather, TinyPICO Mega. It's TinyPICO Pro. I'm not going to call it Mega. Mega's too, yeah, I don't know. Mega implies massive size in my mind. Is it like, for instance, if I wanted to add an RTC to this? Hey, Tinker Dad, how you feeling? Everybody, Tinker Dad's been ill. Man flu. Poor guy. Everyone wish him better. I hope you're better. I really need to drink my coffee before it gets cold. So, to get like an RTC on here, like battery-backed real-time clock, even though the Cortex M0 actually has an internal RTC, like a hardware RTC, there's no battery backup, right? I need to put a whole new board on top that's just got a real-time clock and a battery for, oh God, how much are they? They're not cheap. And I know I could design my own, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose of leveraging. Oops, that's the wrong window. Hang on, I'm trying to bring up my web browser, but of course I can't find it. There it is. I'm just going to go to Adafruit. Let's have a look. Desktop. So, if I go Feather Wing RTC. Right, so they've got this RTC Feather Wing with micro SD on it. Right, it's $9 plus it's going to cost me $10 to ship it. TinyPICO X and charge 10 times. Yeah, no, thanks Ian, but I don't want to do that. Right, and then if you look at one that's actually got the DS, such using the DS17 whatever, the DS3231, which I would never use anything other than, because there's no point putting a hardware RTC on the board that doesn't keep good time, and that's basically what is it 1371, whatever it's called, I don't know. So we're looking at $14 US, so that's like $18 for me, plus shipping. And all I get on it is a real-time clock and a battery. And look at the size of it, it's massive. Right? And if you look at some of their other feather wings, they've got an awesome range of feather wings, don't get me wrong, but they're large, and most of them are just single-purpose boards. And the idea is they're supposed to be stacked. But you end up with this stacked sandwich of different boards if you want to get just a couple of different things on there. Like a real-time, if I wanted a real-time clock and I wanted an IMU, right? I need to put 3 boards together. It's expensive and it's massive. Now, I don't know. That's what I've never really liked about that. Like, I feel like it's definitely still a beginner's. It's a beginner's way of doing hardware, like of joining hardware together, but in a very expensive manner. And maybe if I was living in the States and I was buying in US dollars and I could get free next day delivery, I wouldn't feel that way. But I feel like for the rest of the world, it's just a really expensive way of doing it. Yeah, at least with the D1 Mini shields, though, the D1 Mini is cheap and the shields are relatively cheap, right? So yes, they're stacking and they're, you know, once you stacked a couple of boards, you've basically lost all the I/O. Like when you stack one of these boards on, you don't know what you've got left. Like you start eliminating I/O, and you know, in the case of the R2C, it's fairly simple. It's just using I2C, so you really just using I2C pins. But for something like this, one with the SD card, suddenly you're losing a bunch of pins as well. So it just made kind of sense to me to, well, hang on, why not take some of the basic functionality? Like you look at this board here and how much spare space there is. If I stuck a TinyPICO onto this, let's put it on this side, right? If I stuck a TinyPICO on here, oh, by the way, I should also show you this one here. Wait, this is on a breadboard. Sorry, I don't want to unplug this right now. But this is their Wi-Fi board. So this has got Wi-Fi. It's using a Win. Which one is it? 1500. AT-Win C1500, right? So if you look at it, you've got a board. You've got Wi-Fi. Now I've got all of, and it's no Bluetooth, just Wi-Fi, right? I've got all of that just in here. Pretty much. So what else could I stick on the board? Like, obviously I can bring the RAM on top. I can put the JST connector on top. And then what else could I stick on the board and give the board more value for a larger percentage of people? Hey Michael, I totally get why they're doing it the way they're doing it, and the space that they're selling into. Don't get me wrong, they've got a great model. I really admire Adafruit. They've got a great model. They support all of their hardware with awesome learning tools, which is key, right? You buy a board, you get a complete learning guide, you get a complete diagram guide, you get all opens, like all the schematics and everything else for the board. You get code and libraries ready to go for Arduino and CircuitPython. Pretty much all for CircuitPython. I think they've got over 100 boards now with libraries for CircuitPython. They do a really good job of packaging everything all together, and I get that costs a lot of money and it costs a lot of time. Like, I'm not complaining, but for me and I think for people that move out of this beginner space, because I believe there's still beginner space stuff. I believe that it becomes something that people, once they move out of that they stop working with. Like, I haven't bought a Feather for a long time. So I lied. I bought the M4 Express, this one here, just because it's got a SAMD 51 on it. It's an M4. I wish it had an M4F. The floating point, it doesn't, but that's okay. I wanted to have one so I could play around with how fast it is and stuff and see what I can do with it. But I don't buy into any of this ecosystem because it's not really targeted to me and it's expensive for me to do it. And once you start soldering boards together, that's it. Like, it's a single-use item. Yeah, I'm not having a go at Adafruit. I love Adafruit. I think I'm really impressed by them. Then you want beeps and flashes. If it's a step above a sensor, hell. If it's for a step above, then censor the hell out of it. Otherwise, do both. Right, well, I'm not sure I want to do... I mean, obviously, flashes, sure. I've already got flashing one dot star on here. I could definitely put more than one dot star. Although, no need to if I go in the feather format, because then we can leverage other feather wings, right? Oh, hey, Embedded Hobbyist. I don't think their tech support is rubbish. I think if you look at their forums, they do really try. I think a lot of people, from my experience, I could be totally wrong, like the stuff I've seen on their forums, a lot of people go there and ask questions and don't actually, and I get the beginners, they don't actually do any research first, like, you know what I mean? Like, they ask questions that are really easily answered just by looking on the internet. I feel sometimes people go to a forum and they forget how to use the rest of the internet to help themselves out, if that makes sense. Discovery boards for ESP32 would be good. Discovery boards. You mean like the microchip discovery boards? So I don't know what my target audience is, which is a problem. I don't even know if I have a target audience for this, let alone this or a pro board. That's not going to stop me from designing one though, right? My plan is to, obviously, like I'm sitting on this right now. I'm not in a rush to get the Nano out because I don't quite know what I'm going to do with it, and I need to get this into the world first and see what happens with it, right? Okay, so yeah, the STM have an awesome range of discovery boards. Microchip do the same thing, where you get one of their SAMDs or whatever on a board with a whole bunch of stuff, and you know they're big. Like the STM boards are quite large. They're not designed for anything other than discovery, right? They're not really designed for end users. They're designed for hardware manufacturers to be able to get a fully broken out STM chip that they can learn how to use and learn how to program and customize bootloaders for and other stuff like that. But they're really good. They're yeah, absolutely great boards. And the STM chips are fantastic. And I'd love to start playing with some STM chips. But I don't have enough time at the moment. So I'm not planning on doing anything with the Nano or the Pro right now, other than possibly getting a revision ready to go. But I like the education space. I just don't think I can break into the education space. And what I don't want to do is go head-to-head or try to go head-to-head with a company like Adafruit. And there are already other companies out there that are doing that. in the education space, right? The microbits and other companies that I just don't think I can compete in that space. But I think that doesn't mean though that that there isn't room for a TinyPICO type board in a feather format that has a lot of extra oomph in it, I think. Like to me, a classic example is their feather proto board, which is this one. It's the most basic feather they make with a SAMD 21G on it. And they leave you prototyping space on there. Like I would never solder anything onto this board, me personally. Because once I've soldered stuff onto the board, that's that board done. Like I could remove stuff, I guess, but I would never try to solve any of my projects by soldering something directly onto this board. The Pro should be a 2-layer board with a nano soldered on it, and it would act as a reference design on how to use it as a component of a bigger project. I don't agree with that, Ben. I think that that if this ever goes into production, this needs to be accompanied with a board. Yes, 100%. But I don't necessarily believe that the Pro board version should use the Nano. I'm not sure that's a good way of me leveraging stuff. I don't know. I'm not sure on that. I'd have to think about that more. It's pretty funny though that I can fit my Nano there. Don't you think? I mean that's pretty funny. Yeah. So again, back to the question about the Huzzah. Why would I even do that when they've got a Huzzah 32, right? Huzzah. How do they spell Huzzah? Right, that one. Like this, right? $20. Huzzah. It's got a room 32 on it. Now, the thing with this is... Oh, hang on. I'm not even on the right screen. Apologise. The thing with this is... It's got a room 32, great. It's just a standard ESP32 board, right? In a feather format. It doesn't have extra RAM, which is, again, not great once you stick CircuitPython or MicroPython on there. They don't even really support MicroPython on here anymore, and the rumour at the moment is, it's just a rumour I've heard, that they're actually dropping CircuitPython support for their 2 Huzzah boards. They're not supporting ESP32 natively anymore for CircuitPython. They're moving away from that. They are using ESP32s and 8266s on their boards in AT mode for other boards, like, on their SAMD boards and stuff for the Wi-Fi part, but they are no longer supporting these as full ESP32 boards. Does that make sense? Hang on, I missed something back here from someone, who was it? The Embedded Hobbyist. They shipped a whole lot of HDMI LCDs with the from blank. Oh, okay, right, that type of customer service. That's a shame. Sorry to hear that, Embedded Hobbyist. I don't know, I've never had any problems. I mean, I bought stuff off them before that I couldn't, that the results were getting seemed to be weird, and customer support helped me out on the forums, but they very much take the angle that I need to be able to, if I'm not prepared to help myself, they're not going to help, or they will help me, but they get frustrated when people challenge them. I'm talking about for this, I'm not talking about like, this is faulty support. I'm talking about how do I use this support. If you look at the number of forum posts they get, it's pretty horrific. I wouldn't want to be there. You don't want to compete them, promote, include, endorse your board. Right, I'd like to make a board that Adafruit go, hey, we might stock this. Not, oh, this is competing with them, if that makes sense. I think they have a version with the Pico D4. Who, Adafruit? Have a version with the Pico D4? I don't think so. They might be working on a board that has it for Wi-Fi just D4. I don't think it's D4 though. I think I've seen a board where they're just using a standard ESP32 with external crystal and stuff. I don't think it's a D4, but I could be wrong. Perhaps do a feather piggyback board for the Nano. Feather piggyback board. Like they have for the TZ. You mean an add-on board for the TZ that's got the Nano on it? That wouldn't work. I don't know how that interface with each other. Like it would, yeah, doing something like that for the Nano the Nano is a microcontroller, right? It's not like it's got all the I/O broken. Like it's designed to be it's got onboard regulator and everything else. It's not designed to be an accessory for another board. It's designed to be the brains of a board. See you, Alan. See you soon. Pin compatible opens up a lot of options. What was that? What did I miss? Ian said, no featherboard that has a socket for the Pico. Well, I think that's what Ben said earlier. Make a featherboard that the Nano goes into. But then the featherboard itself is useless. Like, what does that do? Like, I could do that. But, yeah, I'm not sure that... Forget about this side, right? Sorry, let me do this. I'm not sure that is the product. Like, I think that's overly complex for what I'm trying to achieve for the Pro. I think... Yeah, I wouldn't... That would lock this down, I think. Guess all other feathers compatible. So I'm confused. Hang on, wait. Yeah, like right now I'm just thinking of all of this and more on a feather, right? I mean, standalone board, not necessarily a feather. If this ever goes to market, this will have a board that this can connect onto, that people can get going. It'll be an empty board or whatever. It'll be like a proto board, whatever it's going to be, in whatever size it's going to be. It could actually be feather size that this plugs onto that people could use, absolutely, right? But that's not what the Pro is going to be. I think that's still a board that works with the Nano side of the project. I'm still looking at a enhanced board for this side that doesn't run off a Nano, if that makes sense. Yeah, I agree with both Dave and Ben. Yes, this has to have... I've already designed the footprint for this, and I was always planning on working on that. I've got it in Eagle. Like, I've got the starts of all of that in Eagle. But, again, until I know exactly how this is going to work, and how this is going to work as a standalone or for other people, then, yeah... Like, I need to make a decision on the Nano. Is the Nano ever going to be used as a standalone thing, not connected to a board? Because that's what it's designed for, kind of. Sure, it's hard to solder to, but it's a complete microcontroller. If this just ends up being something that you plug onto a board that ends up looking like this, I'm not sure what use this has. Does that make sense? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Like, it's not like a module. It's not like a Room 32, where a Room 32 relies on all the extra hardware outside it, like voltage regulators and everything else to work, because that's what you'd normally design on your board. This has all that on there. So that makes it possibly a difficult fit to fit onto an existing board, I think. When you get the break of the Nano, I'd make sense to use feather format. It might make sense to make feather format, but the feather format's large, don't forget. And I don't think this will work teensy, unfortunately. This is too big for teensy. I've got a teensy somewhere. Hang on a second. I think. Somewhere. I got boards everywhere. One day I'll put all my stuff away in label drawers where they belong. Yeah, I don't know where my teensy is. Sorry, I've got a teensy somewhere. Hey everyone, you might not have heard the story at the start of my mosquito story, but the mosquito is flying around right in front of me. Oh, missed it. Damn! There's a mozzie in the office, and I'm allergic to mosquitoes. Oh, you haven't seen the Nano before? Yeah, the Nano's cool. The Nano was really a, can I make the TinyPICO really super small? It was my need to make things small fetish. Hang on, I've missed a whole lot of chat, I think. Perhaps do... what have I missed? If I've missed anyone, just re-ping me again. Sorry. Only for Pico different than the Pro version. What's David pointing to? 3200. What's 3200? Can I even search for products that way? Teensy feather adapter. Right, sure. Well, I could do that with the TinyPICO. The TinyPICO sits inside. The problem I would have is routing. That would be kind of difficult. Right? I mean, I could do that right now, if you think of that. Right, get rid of the SAMD. I could absolutely do that, but that just makes a feather. I mean, obviously, without the USB. Well, the Nano's only the one for professionals. It's not really professionals, it's more for commercial. I'd call it commercial. Hey, Story Diver. Hey, Jess, how you doing? Like, I see this being useful in commercial space, right? More so than someone who's just going to stick this on, yeah, I mean, that's professional, sure. Yeah, I still don't know. It's very hard to make a decision when I really don't know a marketplace. I don't even know if there's a marketplace for this yet, right? That's the whole point. I need to get this out first. The Nano Pi Neo 4. What? That's a single board computer. You've probably got to work out who it's for until you know that. It's shooting the fire. Agreed. I don't even know who this is for or this is for, let alone a pro. But I'm still keen on making a pro board. Like, it's just something I want to do, right? There's no, like, so as I said on my title, like, while I'm waiting, like, I'm waiting right now. I'm waiting for boards to come in for this. I'm waiting to finalize everything to get the crowd supply campaign happening. I need to get these out in the marketplace and see what happens. But I don't want to sit on my hands in the meantime. I don't want to wait for this to come out and then have a long production cycle to see what's next. Like, I want to be looking at that now, right? And, you know, MicroPython's getting a lot of attention at the moment. Even recently, Adafruit have been just talking about MicroPython stacks more than they normally do, which is interesting considering that they're developing CircuitPython, which is it's not a competitor, but it's a competitor, right? There's enough differences between them that they're two different things, two different directions. Yeah, there's no free space in the Neo 4, and you know, it's packed in all too tight. Packed in good too. All right, okay, right, I understand, yes. Maybe it's too tight, though, I don't know. Oh, I have some exciting news, by the way. So, I heard from Damien yesterday, and Damien has managed to... So MicroPython is now, well, it's not the official version, but you can download mainline, which is now fully up to date with the IDF, full PSRAM support out of the box, and he's managed to get access to the whole entire 4 meg of RAM instead of the 2.8 meg, which is awesome. So now you get full 4 meg of heap with a TinyPICO with MicroPython, which is pretty cool. So design the Money's No Object Pico D4 board. Well, that's what I was thinking of doing. Well, maybe not the Money's No Object. But yes, yes. So, okay, let's go into, well, let's go back to desktop. So, well, my aim on this video, on this stream, is actually to start working in Eagle, I think. I haven't got there yet, and it's already 7:51. What are the features that make the TinyPICO special? Okay, yeah, let's go back here. The TinyPICO. So, it's... Well, in my mind, right, but a lot of these things might not be important to other people, Paul, but it's very small. It's got, obviously, extra RAM, an extra 4 meg of RAM. It's, well, I call it low-ish power support. Without the RAM, it's got very low power support, but unfortunately, the RAM takes 100 microamps. And there's nothing I can do about that, right? And you can't just you can't turn off the RAM, because then people lose stuff in memory, which is not nice, right? I could tie the RAM to deep sleep, but when you put the board to sleep, you don't necessarily want to lose memory. So I don't know how, you know, like right now, it's a shame, because I've got this to be sitting around 15 microamps when it's in deep sleep, and then you've got the memory, and the memory's a kicker. But it's super small, it's got memory, it's breadboard compatible, it's got onboard battery management, it's basically got everything that a large board has got. It's got everything that... Where's all my boards? Right. It's basically this with extra memory and lower power, but that size. So, you know, I don't know if that really oh, it's got onboard RGB LED, which, you know, some people like, some people don't. You know, if you're going to put this in a box in your cupboard, well then it doesn't matter, it's got an RGB LED. But the fact that there's an RGB LED on there for, you know, that you can use for, you know, data, you know, it goes red if something like, you know, if you can't connect to Wi-Fi, it's red. If it's got Wi-Fi, it's green. If whatever, that's kind of useful, but sometimes not useful. So it's very hard to know. Like, all the things that I think make this cool might not appeal to someone. And the struggle I'm always going to have is that, you know, especially because of price, that, you know, someone, you know, might look at this and go, okay, this is $20 US, right? Okay, this is $10 US or $9 US, right? Well, I really want a small board, but I'm not prepared to pay double the price for a small board. I don't know. Very hard to tell. I mean, obviously this is super breadboard. This is a wide breadboard. This is super breadboard friendly compared to this. Yeah, well, that's the point. So the Pro should be everything that this is, but with more peripherals and more stuff. And if you look at the feather is still smaller than the Wemos, and it's got a whole ecosystem of shields, which kind of makes sense to me, because, you know, you'd get a TinyPICO Pro with a bunch of fundamental things, right? And then if you want something like, you know, see, to me, a lot of the feather wings would be kind of useless. Well, I think they're just in generally useless. Where did my web browser go? There it is, right? But what I think would be really cool, like, so have you seen the feather LED matrix? Like these things, right? So like that, for instance, that plugs onto the top of the Pico, like the Pico Pro. You know, they've got stuff like that, or they've got, let's just look at all their feathers. Feather wing. Can you just do feather wing? Feather wing. Is that even? Here we go. Right. So look, if you look at all their feather wings, they've got like expanders and doublers, whatever. They've got an OLED screen. So, like, you know, we're already talking about for the TinyPICO of making an OLED screen, but I made it a little bit too small to make it justifiable. So you can get an OLED screen hat. You can get obviously the RTC. There's an Ethernet feather wing. I don't know what the INA is. That's like a voltage sensor thing. What else have I got? I mean, they've got 11 pages of stuff. Like, it's crazy. They've got their dot star feather wing, which, oh, looks so good. $30. Anyway. They've got the joystick feather wing. I mean, they've got a whole bunch of stuff that I could leverage. Prop maker feather wing. We needed to be certified. And no, certification doesn't come cheap. And so, well, professional use, yes. But I don't necessarily believe that a TinyPICO Pro is something that would need to be technically certified. I don't know. I still believe that that if it's going for the ecosystem, the featherwing ecosystem, it's still hobbyist space to me. Like, anyone that was really going to use something like that in a production environment wouldn't be using a feather and a feather wing in a production environment, I don't believe. It'd be absolutely prosumer space if they were, not professional space. But the Nano, absolutely. The Nano would have to be certified, which is a massive investment. So, yeah, really unsure about that. Very unsure. Look at some of the Olimex ESP30 boards. They kind of loaded them up with stuff. Yeah, I'm not doing Ethernet though, David. I'm not putting Ethernet on the TinyPICO Pro. Okay, so let's go back to... Oh, Brian is back. I didn't even know you were gone, Brian. So what I started was, I've started with just an empty feather space. So, oh, interesting. What happened here? Wow, that didn't work. I've got some corrupt data. Wow, okay. I copied something over wrong. Anyway, so here is just a single sheet. It's got the feather footprint, and it's just got, again, the IMU, and I'm even on the right screen. Can everyone see what I'm looking at? Yep. It's got the IMU, it's got the temp sense, it's got the light sensor. So that's basically, I mean, obviously nothing's put on there yet, and I've kept the Adafruit feather basic outline shell. Obviously you need to keep the reset button in, or maybe the reset button, I don't know. And I need to keep the rest of the form factor the same. So there's USB, although I need to swap out the pads and use mine, not theirs, which is fine. JST connector needs to stay in place. And then it's all about putting TinyPICO parts inside that space. The right name for a board that is not professional use. But define professional use, Paul, that's the thing. I think that there's a confusion between professional and commercial. I don't believe professional requires certification. I think commercial. The thing with certification is if you're making a product and you're on selling that product to someone, that's commercial, and that requires certification. Right? You could be a professional, like you could be a pro user, but still be making something and not necessarily selling it. You could be prototyping with it. Like I still consider all of this Featherwing space and TinyPICO space prototyping space. Right? You might not be a hobbyist. You might be doing it for a living. You might be a professional, but you'd be leveraging this stuff to prototype with. Like at the end of the day, no one ships a stacked set of boards as a product. I don't believe, right? You'd prototype it all and then you'd build a custom PCB out of it if it's going inside a product. And I know that there could be absolutely some grey area, but I'm not sure the grey area is the space that I'm targeting there, or the space that this would necessarily appeal to. What are you going to do with all the space on the feather? Right, all the space is for, as you might have missed it, Brian, is that I want to add in some extra stuff. Like right now I can fit my TinyPICO, as I said, inside this section here. And my TinyPICO also has USB and everything on it. Well, okay, I'm just going to bring it in and I'll show you. So in Eagle, you can just go File, Import. I'm going to grab another Eagle drawing. So I'm just going to go to my TinyPICO. I'm just going to do it off screen so people can't see the contents of my computer. Quite expensive to make a 4-layer board with that much bigger. Yeah, yes, it will. I'm not sure I can get all this together without a 4-layer board, personally. I think trying to get all this working as a 2-layer board would be, yeah, a nightmare. It'd be an interesting challenge, but I don't think it's something I could pull off personally, and I think I'd end up just wasting my time. Sorry, I'm still trying to find my TinyPICO. There it is. Okay. Bring it in. It shows you if there's any conflicts with anything. And no conflicts. And now I have my TinyPICO sheet in here. If I go back to my board, I'll have both of them on here. I don't know why it sticks it down there. Very annoying. And let's just move this up. Should be able to squeeze it just there. Okay. So as you can see, like I can grab my TinyPICO and I can fit that inside the Featherwing. I'm not gonna, but like you see that, like it fits inside. And if I take off all the header pins and everything else, like I've got plenty of room to get all of that on there, including the RAM and everything else. Even the antenna fits just inside. I don't know if I'll have enough space left to get everything else I want on there. You know, like as you can see here, I've already stuck a lot of these jumpers onto the bottom of the board. These are jumpers for selecting addresses and things like that for I2C. The commercial product needs to be certified anyhow, so long as the Pico Nano Wi-Fi cleaner can be used for a commercial product even if it's not certified itself. Right, at the end of the day, so just the way the law works, from my understanding, is if this is sold as something that goes onto another board, it does not have to be certified. The end product has to be certified. Even if I certify this, which will help the end product with certification, it still has to be recertified by the person who's implemented it, right? I mean, they could have, you know, if this is certified and they stick it on their board and they completely put EMI crap all across it and have, you know, whatever, it's going to have to get recertified and they might still have to make changes to their design. So that, again, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I really need to decide what the target market is for that to do that. My show is on telly. Okay, catch you later, Paul. Have fun watching Target, whatever it's called, however you say it. The certifying product is a lot easier when the Wi-Fi part of it is already certified. It is easier, yes, unless you've wrecked it. It's possible to wreck it. Like for instance, like to get this certified, I'm probably going to have to shield it. Well, it's going to make it much easier to get certified if I shield this. And if I shield this, this is going to become 30% bigger, right? Just to get a shield on it, because I need to make space to put the shield around it, and I can't have the shield touch the antenna. So I'm going to have to make it longer. I'm going to have to make it wider, and then all the castellated edges are going to live outside the shield. So that in itself is going to make this a much bigger board. And then, you know, we're suddenly getting back to, you know, obviously maybe not the size of a Room 32, but, you know, and considering this is basically a cross between a Room 32 and a Rover, because you've got the extra RAM, which the Room 32 doesn't have, it still would be a viable product, potentially, but not unless I hit a massive scale of production. So, yes. And for the cost of certifying it, unless it goes massive scale, you know, it might not see the light of day because of that. I don't know. But I don't agree that a pro board has to be certified. Again, it depends. A commercial board has to be certified. But to me, a pro board is something that isn't designed for the beginner space. I think. Like, in my mind. And again, I'm separating pro and commercial. And maybe a lot of you aren't, or maybe other people don't. Maybe I'm unfairly separating the two. I don't know. But I feel like I'm a professional user. Right? I'm not a hobbyist. I'm a professional. Okay, jury's out on that one. But you know what I mean? But I'm a professional user in terms of my level. Yet I still use these boards for prototyping. Okay? Because I want to know that something works first before I commit to putting it down onto a PCB. But I don't need any of the stuff I'm working on to be certified to do that. But I'm still looking for a professional board. Does that make sense? And I think there are a lot of people out there like that. A lot of people in that crossover space, they've moved on from the beginning stuff. And they want to go to the next level. But the stuff they're working on, they don't need certified hardware to do it because they're not shipping it. I would never ship a product with one of these boards in it. I would never ship a product with a TinyPICO in it. Right? To me, the TinyPICO is still a prototyping board. Like, it's a development board. You know, look at my Wi-Fi clock. You know, I could easily stick a D1 Mini on the back of my Wi-Fi clock. But I didn't. I made a custom board for it. That's the professional space I'm referring to. Does that make sense? Like, do you think I'm overshooting the mark there? I don't know. I feel like there's a space there. TinyPICO Proto. The Raspberry Pi was held up at the start due to CMC testing problems. I mean, if you look at all the Adafruit stuff is certified, right? And good on them. They've got the money, the expertise, and the time to do it. I mean, I don't. I'm not in that space. Like, I wish I was. You know, which is interesting because their stuff is... They're definitely targeting the beginner space, right? In the learning space, the education space. But the stuff's of professional enough quality that, you know, someone could stick this in a project. You know, like let's say someone was making a touchscreen something or other for a convention or something, and you'd probably use a Pi for that, but whatever, you know what I mean? Like, does the hardware inside that have to be certified? Like, it's not being sold, it's being used somewhere. Like, where's the grey area on that? The fact that you could stick a feather in there, that like a feather with Wi-Fi, and it's certified, well, that just gives you a little bit more peace of mind, but I don't know. I'm not sure that's overly important in that space, because you're not selling it. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, right? I mean, I've read up as much as I can about it, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. That's... I don't have enough to even learn what I'm doing here, let alone learn any lawyer-related stuff. So, I really wanted to work on the board today. I was going to actually make a feather version, or at least get it inside the feather space. But I've ended up talking a lot more than I was planning to, again. So we should just... I might even start just ripping some stuff off, I think. Like, we don't need these headers. It's going to be interesting mapping this to the feather. Now, by the way, this feather I started with the Huzzah. Not that it makes any difference, but this is their ESP32 Huzzah. Bye, helmet. Catch you later. Back now, so to have an ice bath. Oh no. Did you get any injuries, or you just saw, David? So 30-second recap. We're just talking about a Pro version of a TinyPICO. So TinyPICO Pro and what that would be. And I'm pretty much decided that and we're discussing now whether Pro is the right word, because Pro implies commercial, maybe. I don't think it does. But I think there's a crossover or confusion there. Thinking of TinyPICO Pro, but in a feather format, but with extra stuff on it. So not an empty feather, because that's already done. You can already get an ESP32 feather with nothing else on it. I'm thinking of a Pro, so a TinyPICO on a feather, where I've got room to stick other hardware. So maybe an IMU and a temperature sensor and a light sensor. I don't know what else yet. Whatever I can fit on there. I think David means soccer. You think Pro is fine? Thanks, Brian. I've been given the Brian endorsement. Pro implies matte black. Yeah, well, we won't even go into the black story again. Not today. It's still a sore point for me. By the way, I've not discarded black as an option. Right now I've discarded black from JLC PCB as an option. Their quality is not good enough to do black. No, it's for professional use, Tabletronics. It's not for commercial use. That's the thing. I don't believe professional and commercial are the same thing. I'm a professional. I would use it. I would not ship a product with it. That's commercial. TinyPICO Plus. Plus what? Could be a plus, yeah, TinyPICO Plus. Yeah? I don't mind that, actually. Thanks, Paul. Soccer, yes, soccer. You got turf toe. Oh, how many times did you kick the ground instead of the ball, David? Oh no! Oh, Andy Mouse is here. Hello. And Graham's here. Have a bet each way and call it a Pro-Am. A Pro-Am. The Pro board for the amateurs. Yeah, I don't mind Plus. I'm just going to write that down. TinyPICO Plus. Plus is interesting, yeah. It probably, yeah, that clears that up, right? Yeah, just the once. If it's a good one, you get the whole jarring up your leg, right? And then you get a sore back. It works for the golf. Yeah. I'm not sure the golf is the right space for me to be positioning my naming from. But yes, it does work. Definitely in the golf space. But no, I like Plus. I don't mind Plus. Could be Plus. TinyPICO Plus. So, okay, I've got rid of those. I'm going to... so I want to keep my USB, but I need to put it where their USB was. This is going to be fun. This is because it's quite messy. I'm just going to get rid of the bottom layer for the moment, because that is just can't see anything. Oops, top. Like you can see how slow it is right now. Did I say something to you? I'm watching Daniel Tiger. Who is Daniel Tiger? What? To me, pro means hardened, fail, resilient, etc. Sure. Like pro means of a higher quality, but that implies then that the TinyPICO is not resilient to failure, right? Because it's not a pro. It doesn't have pro in the name. I'm not sure about that. Gave up playing football when I was 6. Wow, Andy. Wow. Okay. I'm just going to... whoop, bloop, bloop, bloop. I'm not sure if any of you noticed. I've put more curvies on some of my routing. My TinyPICO. Not everywhere. Just where I could fit it in. It was just an experiment on... See that? So did everyone see Bill Hurd's latest video on the Hackaday on the YouTube channel? He pretty much thinks that square corners is not a problem for high speed at all, which is interesting. And I definitely trust him. Would you be adding your nano to the feather layout? We spoke about that before, Paul. That's something that I could do for the nano as a thing for the nano, but not as the pro version. No, I don't want to make a pro version that requires me making the nano. That makes sense? Just go back to here again. The nano will, if I ever ship a nano, it will have an accompanying board it can plug onto for prototyping or whatever, an extension board, which will be, obviously the design files will be there so people can just grab that footprint and use it themselves in their own thing, or there'll be a board that they can just put this on and use it. But this is not, this on this does not become the pro version. The pro version is a fully standalone board. Because I don't necessarily know if I'm going to build this. This is expensive. Like this just in itself, unfortunately, is as expensive as this is. So that's a big deterrent to using it on the Pro board and making it reliant on, the Pro Plus, whatever it's going to be called. Kids TV show. Brian's watching Kids TV show. That's nice. Yeah. I want my Plus Pro board to be a fully standalone board, not something that's got the nano on it. I don't want to be stuck having to do the nano. I'm not sure that'll be cost effective, personally. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I want to do that. Okay, I just want to... I just need to move my USB. So let me... This is... Oh, no, don't even have the right screen now. Come on. Go away. I really wanted to do some routing today. Sorry, some PCB design. That was my plan. But it just hasn't happened. I'm determined to get a little bit done. Of course, Eagle doesn't run super fast when... wow, look at the size difference of the USB. That's pretty crazy. Let's delete their one. Say bye-bye USB. If I get one thing on the board today, that's a bonus. Sorry, 16. 16. Yeah. That, I've got JST there, so I don't need my JST here. Got a schematic. This is going to take a lot of back and forwards. So that's mine gone. Obviously you can't see because mine's on the bottom. So I'm just going to get rid of all these. Actually, what I might do is I'm going to turn everything off, hide all my layers except for my wires, and I'm just going to grab them and move them away for now. All these ground ones around the antenna, I'm just going to move them out the way, right out the way. I don't know how far I can take them. That'll do. Okay. Top. Just means that I can now grab this and stick it inside. Let me get rid of my labels. Top names. See you later. Okay. Do I need my vi? I'm going to keep my vise for now. This is probably a bad idea, actually. I probably should have ripped it all up first. I don't really want to rip it all up. Some stuff I want to keep the routing for if I can. If I can. And some stuff not. So the antenna, you can see the outline for the antenna. Let me just zoom that in. It does fit inside their holes. I don't know what would happen if you stuck metal screws in there to hold it down. I think there might be a problem, like it'll affect the RF. But I mean, if you look at that, I'm just going to interesting. Yeah, I'm going to just get rid of these. The board outline. Just don't need that. Yeah, go away. And the ground plane. Okay, what is that? Okay, sometime later. So move close to the holes for a screw head to fit. It does. It does, as I said. That might be a problem. Although if you look at the Huzzah again, and I know it's shielded. Huzzah, that's pretty... I mean, look at that. Can everyone see that? Hang on, let's see if we can get a bigger version. I'm pretty sure that's close to the screw holes. It's actually overlapping the screw holes. So, it was good enough for Adafruit. If you use nylon screws, it should be fine. And you should really be using nylon screws, not metal screws anyway. Plastic bolts and nuts, that's right. Yeah, nylon all the way. I've got boxes of nylon screws and nuts. Unfortunately, they're really hard to get from China. Sorry, they're not hard to get from China. No, they are. They're much harder to get from China. I wouldn't trust anything I get from China when I ask for nylon. But Adafruit sell a really good range of nylon screws. 2, 2.5 and 3. M3s, I think. You can also get Teflon ones, which are pretty cool. So, yeah, so I'm not overly worried about this. I mean, there's a solution for that. So, I mean, as you can see, there's stacks of room, right? I'm just going to get rid of some of these ground wires. They're all just ground. Choop, chirp, chirp. Doop, doop. Should have deleted them before, sorry. I should just do this. Sometimes I just like the click, click, click to delete rather than the group delete. It's therapeutic, I think, sometimes. I'm just getting rid of all the ground ones that I don't need for now. Well, that's not ground, but anyway. I mean, I might be able to space this out and do 2-layer, Ben. I might. I mean, if it was just this going in it, absolutely. Because don't forget, I had a 2-layer version. I think my revision 5 was 2-layer. But it's when I squeeze everything else on, it could be the problem. Bit of trace there, let's get rid of it. I'm just getting rid of all of these, they're just ground. Yeah, yes, I know. Okay, cool. So there's stacks of room. I mean, if you saw that how much I squeezed into my other Pro board, right? And my other Pro board is smaller, way smaller than the feather. My other Pro board fits inside the feather. So I think I could definitely squeeze all this on and more. I mean, if I just put them here for now. So that is the temp sensor and the light sensor. Right, I need to get the RAM on top as well. That's the IMU. I'm just sticking it just anywhere right now. Let me get the RAM. Need to switch layers. Go to the bottom. Wow, look at that. I'm basically enough, to be honest. It isn't a big board. Right, and I'd never have any screw holes on my TinyPICO at all. But yes, it's I'm just gonna get rid of all this routing. I'm not sure if I do a rip up from here, whether it'll rip up just the blue layer or not. So I'm just gonna do this. It's fairly quick. Chirp chirp. Can everyone hear that chirp? I don't know why it's set to chirp, but instead of a eh, it does a chirp. So, I was saying before, early on, about my changing the name of my channel. Yeah, I've had a really bad couple of days. I've had, make a list of all the things that went right and all the things that went wrong in my last few days, and there's nothing on the right list and everything else is on the wrong list. I think you can group select and rip up. Yeah, I know, but there's something therapeutic about all the massive double clicking. I think. Okay, let's just mirror you. Bye. Bye. And go back to the top layer. I think it's part of the procrastination thing, David. The whole just click, 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 forever clicking, right? It's just a time-wasting exercise that's kind of therapeutic, I think. Anyway, but that chirping's really annoying. They really need to turn that off. So RAM. So I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff in the wrong place here, right? But what is that even pointing to? That's really weird. If I just do that, there we go. Totally predictable maker. Me? Well, why do group and one click when I can do 20 clicks? Is that what you mean, David? I don't recommend it. When I changed my YouTube channel name, it forced me to change my Google. Yeah, I'm not really changing my name. I'm not changing my name. It's Unexpected Maker. It's staying Unexpected Maker. Oh, you think I should change it to Totally Predictable Maker? Nah. Anyway, I've had a really bad run of stuff. I'm not prepared to go through it all. Let's just say a lot of things have gone wrong over the last probably week or so. And one day I'll talk about it. Right now I'm not going to. That's not what this stream's all about. But I've definitely been feeling like I need to... Yeah. I know you're kidding. But apparently I am becoming predictable. So I've been told. I'm just going to put these here. I'm going to put these here. Just so I can remember them. I'm going to move that over here. Just why not? So I've got plenty of space. Plenty of space. Okay. And it won't let me rename again for 90 days. I need a new color matte. I should swap it out. I did swap it out for a bit for the purple. But the purple doesn't work well on camera, I don't think. So I went back to the blue. I really like the blue. Just, I don't know, it looks really nice. I love it. Oh, okay. So, what's the time? Got 34 minutes, folks. 34. So, obviously, I mean, yeah, the whole A1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is really annoying. Obviously, there's more I need to break out, like RX and TX, which I don't have broken out right now. Yeah, I need to match this. I need to go through and look at their Huzzah layout and work out what they did with their pinouts. The advantage they've got is in the Arduino IDE anyway, which is really the only place that's important for the pinouts, is they do their own board configuration, which means you can call their pin A1. You can reference A1 and internally A1 points to whatever it needs to point to on the ESP32, which is great. They can do that because they control their boards and everything else. In my case, because it's going to be an ESP32, I need to get included on the ESP32 boards, which I'm going to do. TinyPICO is going to be included on there. So I'm going to have to make a custom board and then rely on Espressive updating their boards profiles to be able to have this ship. So there'll be a TinyPICO Pro or TinyPICO Plus in that boards list that you'll select, and then you'll be able to do things like A0, A1, which right now A1, A0 doesn't exist on an ESP32. So if I've become predictable, I'm very sorry, folks. Really. It was never my plan to be predictable. But the whole unexpected maker thing has nothing to do with what I'm making. You know that, right? It was the fact that I was unexpectedly a maker. You've all seen my intro video, right? Cold coffee. Yeah, so, I mean, we should keep the reset button, right? I mean, the reset button can be moved anyway. That's really, just going to move it down. I don't mind keeping the reset button. I could definitely move some of this stuff away. Like, there's no need for the APA to be over here now. I could probably move it over, and I could probably even put a couple of APAs on there. Maybe that might be interesting. Yeah, and I still need to get the bottom stuff over. I'm just going to do that now. So right now there's a bunch of jumpers. I don't know if I'm going to keep them all. Like, I don't know if I'm going to break out everything on the IMU. Because it's not a module, right? So just to let you know, the IMU has a... If we just go to the schematic for it. Okay, I need to shut down my messenger. Okay. Can everyone hear the pinging? You can patch the board's files with a JSON URL. Right, but then I've got to ask people to add a custom entry into their settings. Yeah, I know I can do that. No, especially pretty cool. I mean, they're going to add TinyPICO to the list. I'm sure they'll be able to add this for me as well. So with the IMU, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I probably don't need, right? Like auxiliary, SCL, SDA. It's not designed to be a breakout board, like a module. So it's not designed to be plugged into something else. So I don't know why you'd want to drive this IMU from something else when it's already on the board. Obviously, I need address selection, I guess, because in case there's a conflict. It's a bit annoying that there's only the one address selection. You can only choose between two addresses. So, I might make that selectable, I might not. I don't know. Having the interrupt pin broken out is probably a good idea, but having the clock and the F-sync, I don't know. I mean, they don't need to be broken out, is my point. What they're going to get connected to, I don't know. Should there be jumpers that turn them on or not? I'm not quite sure yet. It's kind of the same with the temperature sensor over here. The alert and the address. Are we going to, do I work that out already or not? They've also got the ability to switch between 3 volts and 5 volts for these, I think. Again, I just need to go 3 volts, so keeping the bottom of the board empty. The plan is to have no circuitry on the bottom. Hey, Station 240. Yeah, it's annoying that they've only got... I mean, I've looked at some I2C chips recently that have no address capability. Like, you can only... Like, they've got a fixed address and you can't change it. And that's really annoying. So it'd be interesting to see... Like, right now there's only the 2 I2C. Like, it'd be interesting to see if I could get these both working, and do I get rid of the address ability? I don't know yet. Yes, this is using the feather format. This is the... This is it sitting inside the feather right now. What else has to go on the bottom? They're all labels. So let me go back to the top. So this is still planning the Plus to be... Pro or Plus to be, yeah, on the feather. Great list of known I2C addresses. Okay, I'll have to look through that. I may have missed it. Didn't see on spend time explaining why he doesn't like featherboards because of their availability and cost for people outside the States. Yeah, I did. For me, like, but I'm not that user space, right? Is what I'm trying to explain. Like, I feel like there's a huge ecosystem for Feather, and there are plenty of other manufacturers that are going the Feather format because of that. So there's no reason why I shouldn't leverage it. That doesn't mean that this is not a board necessarily for me. I make my own boards, so I'm not the target market for this. But I totally get that there's a massive target market for this. Clearly there's a massive target market for this. It's just not me. That's all. And I feel like for anyone that designs their own hardware, it's probably not, well, the MPU has a master I2 bus for external sensors. Yes, it does. I'm just not sure how useful that'll be breaking it out, that's all, to electronics. What? I have an upcoming project with 50 of the same I2C chip. No external address selection, but can be changed through an ICC command using the initial address. Right, there's also I2C remapping hardware. Well, not remapping, sorry. There's, like, you can get, so like the MCP 23017, which is I2C to GPIO, you can get, David Grant's let me know about, like, I2C to I2C. I think it was David. Was it you, David? I think it was. So what you can do is, oh no, or was it Matt? Can't remember who I had the conversation with. But you can get IC, so what you can do is you can plug a whole bunch of things into this chip on one side, and you can say, okay, you tell the chip, right now I want to talk to this address, which is mapped to this item, and then anything you send goes to there, and then you say, okay, I want to talk to this address, and everything goes to this one. Yeah, they might be expensive, I don't know. I mean, again, something not needed for here, but for something where you have a lot of I2C stuff and you don't have enough control to set their addresses, that's kind of useful. Yeah. What isn't expensive? Everything's expensive these days. So back to John's question, yeah, like I feel like if I'm, like, what I don't want to do is reinvent another form factor. There's no point making a Pro Plus. I'm going to keep calling it Pro Plus. There's nothing good about making a Pro Plus that makes another form factor that has no support, that has no, you know, that no one, I mean, it's great, it's a board, but it doesn't leverage anything else, right? If I'm going to make a bigger board, even though I could make everything on here right now, pointing to the screen, even though I could make everything that you see on the screen right now smaller, like my first revision of the Pro board is considerably smaller than this. But this is just a form factor that's becoming a de facto. You know, if other people weren't doing it, if Particle wasn't doing it, I mean, there's some NRF boards that are doing it. There's even that guy that's making a single board Linux computer that's in a Feather format. If other people weren't doing it, then maybe, I don't know. But it seems to be a shift where people are doing it. Like, the Feather is becoming just a go-to form factor. So it makes no sense for me to make a bigger board that doesn't fit it. Even if it doesn't suit a lot of people, or people that might use it might not buy Feather wings, right? It still doesn't make any sense not going with that form factor, I think. Yeah. So I could probably do all this as a 2-layer board. And maybe not. And I've also got the issue, if I go 2-layer board, I might have a problem with heat again. Thanks, David. Got thumbs up for Mr. Watts. Like, I don't even know about, like, to be honest, like, some of the things I've put on here, because they're stuff that people put on their boards, or that are on other boards, but, like, I don't know, like a temperature sensor. So let's say someone was putting this board inside a box somewhere to measure temperature in their roof. Because that would be something that would, you know, I could, you know, that people do that, right? They take a D1 Mini, they put a temperature sensor on it, and they stick it in their roof, right? That's not professional use. even though they might be professional. Like, but still, like, that's a acceptable use case. But normally you'd want the temperature sensor to be somewhere specific, right? So having a temperature sensor on the board and the board inside a box or whatever limits the temperature sensor use, right? Just like having a light sensor on the board, excuse me, not being in the optimal position. Like, so on my clock, where's my Wi-Fi clock? Oh. I don't know where I put it. That's okay. I'll scrape this. But like with my Wi-Fi clock, right? I mean, my LDR is sitting... Oh, wrong screen. My LDR is sitting in this hole, and it's sitting pushed up. So it's sitting about 0.5 centimeter away from the back. So it can actually detect the light, right? Like having it inside the box isn't going to help me. I'm back. Problem with temp sensor on board is the board heating up from the MPU. Right. I mean, again, which yeah. So I don't even know if there's value, like the stuff that I've chosen right now is just, I don't know. You know, you say to people, hey, what type of things would you like on your board? And temperature sensor comes up a lot, interestingly. Like I've had this discussion with a lot of people. Hey, Rob, one useful for monitoring health of system rather than environment. Sure. But how often do you need health on system? And the TinyPICO has although it's a detect temperature on die, there is a temperature sensor in the Pico D4. So, you know, you could look at, I mean, that obviously measures heat based on what the chip's doing, but that could give you a relative thing in terms of a baseline. But yeah, like it's, again, like this is why I haven't speaker driver and or mic. Sure. So a speaker driver could be interesting, although where would you break it out? I'd have to put like a screw terminal on there to connect the speaker to, which is totally fine. Or I could just put an onboard speaker like the Circuit Playground Express has got. And it's fairly loud, it's not too bad, but again, if it's going to be in a box, maybe not ideal. The same with the mic. Having an onboard mic is great, but if it's not in a box, if it's in a box, I know I keep going back to in a box, but you know, like, because this is education space, which is where I started, right? Education space. Because this is education space, like this is designed to be sitting, this is designed to be used as a board like this. You know, it's not designed to go in a project box. It's not designed to go in a project at all, kind of. Like, you know, people use them on wearables. They absolutely build stuff with them, for sure. But they're not designed to go in a closed box. You know, because again, you wouldn't see the LEDs, and you wouldn't be able to use the microphone, and you wouldn't be able to press the buttons, and you wouldn't be able to use the speakers. So, yeah. Input sensors would be good to get beginners up to speed. Absolutely, if it's but that then is taking back to the educational space, right? You know, I guess like if I kept the temp sensor well away from the MPU and well away from the Pico, you know, I mean right now half these resistors are and caps are for the MPU and half of them are for the temp sensor. I have to keep it away from the USB port as well because that can get warm. You know, maybe the temp sensor has to be... Oh, stop that. It needs to be away from the ground pin because there's going to be heat dissipating off the ground pin. You know, like maybe the board's big enough that if the temp sensor was over here, you know, and the MPU was way over here, you know, if you remove all the sensors that aren't useful when put in a box, I feel you're back to the original TinyPICO. I agree. Hey, J-Man, I know. That's why I've been trying to and ah. Like, is it an educational board? Then it doesn't matter because it's not designed to go in a box. Is it a professional board, plus board, that potentially someone could use it and leverage it in a project, an actual project, not a today I'm building this, tomorrow I'm pulling it apart and building something else, right? And then, yeah, once I start taking sensors off, then it just becomes a feather, like an ESP Huzzah, or a TinyPICO in a feather format, right? Yeah. In education, I can see a temperature sensor is a great addition, as well as an LDR and touch sensor IC. Well, I don't need a touch sensor IC because the Pico's got touch sensing pins. I could definitely break out some pads for touch sensing. Immediate input is a fantastic ability to have. True battery voltage sensing might be good. Yeah, I thought of sticking a battery gauge IC. That's another thing that can go on here, which would be useful. Just another IC to put on. You can get, yeah, ICs that actually do that can show you exactly how much battery is left and proper charge state. Although I do have that functionality on my TinyPICO where you can read pin 35 and 34 to get approximations. It's not quite a battery gauge. USB-C, yeah, I still don't know if USB-C would be useful. Don't get me wrong, I love USB-C, absolutely, but everything is still micro B, USB. So I'm really not sure that the extra effort of USB-C... Well, the first problem is I can't get USB-C on here and keep the feather format. USB-C would be a massive... Like, the USB-C would go into where the JST connector is, and I can't move the JST connector. Like, if I move any of that around, I'm no longer feather compatible. So I need to be careful on that. I'm letting my ignorance show. About what, David? Oh, about the ESP... No, you don't use ESP32s. How would you know? That's fine. ESP32's got a whole bunch of touch pins. And on the TinyPICO... Bear with me 1 second. I'll show you what I've broken out. If I can find it. Layout, pin out, showcase, pin out. And look at this, you want to see something sad? Look what I did. I made a green version. USB-C is the greatest invention of mankind. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 6 touch pins broken out. Although technically, with the ESP32, they've got what's called a GPIO matrix internally. So when you build and compile, you can assign any pin anything. I could, you could go in and make hardware SPI on any pins you want. You could make any IO be anything you want. It's really cool. But stock standard TinyPICO, stock standard Pico D4, this is what I've got broken out. So I've got 6 touch broken out. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ADCs. Obviously 2 DACs. There's only 2 DACs on there anyway, but 2 DACs. For the APA 102, they're the IO I'm using for them. So clock and data, and of course power now. So you can turn the power to the APA off just with the IO2. It does have an IO mux, yes. Yes, the GPIO matrix, the internal matrix, is very good. You can remap any pin to be anything you want. What video number was it? Title, TD. Sorry, James. Hello, but what video number? I'm not sure what. GPS LoRa, yeah. Well, obviously you'd use those as add-on boards, right? I mean, the GPS and LoRa are too big to put onto this board. Oh, okay. Might be you. It's not me. Okay, there you go. It's you. I will ignore. Now I'm lost. Yeah. What I was saying. Yeah, so there's plenty of touch pins. I just have to work out a way of breaking them out somewhere. Preferably on the top of the board. I don't know if there'll be a lot of room for that. You like the green? Yeah, I'm not a fan of the green. Well, sorry, I don't mind green, and if I have to ship green, I will. But I think this looks nicer I think that looks a bit nicer, personally. Sad. Such a shame. Haven't even updated the blackboard with a new IO2, because there's no point. There's no point. So I have not given up on black on production. If someone can do production in black, absolutely going to go for it. But if they can't, if it's going to be the same problem, then I'm stuck going green. But for now, my boards coming from JLC PCB are going to be green, and all my samples for crowd supply, for the campaign, for the launch, all the product shots and everything are going to be green. And I'll specify that it might be black in the end. I'm new here, and they're an ESP feather. Hey Dave, you're new here, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself. No, I'm just kidding. Analog Lamb products. What are we looking at? J-Man. Analog Lamb. Let's look at this. What this product plays. That dollar, seriously. Yeah, I agree. I think black looks professional. ESP32 Mini, the smallest ESP32 board. Wow. Okay, look at that. Someone beat me to it. Although it's absolutely not the smallest. And it's got no onboard battery. And it's got no onboard antenna. You need to add your own antenna. And it's got no extra RAM. And it's got no APA. So that's interesting. Although it's looks like it's fully broken out, which is also interesting. So that's a, yeah, it's like a reference board. And that's pretty cheap. Well, there you go. But it's absolutely not the smallest. So, Dave Darko. So, yes, there is. So, the thing with the ESP Feather is, firstly, it's just got a room 32 on here, on it. It's got no extra RAM, and it's not really being officially supported by Adafruit anymore. I've been told that they're dropping support for their ESP stuff for CircuitPython. It's not going to be a first-class citizen. They're focusing away from ESP. And that could be because there's so much MicroPython work happening. It could just be because they're having too much trouble with CircuitPython on the ESP stuff. But while they can continue selling the ESP Huzzah, the Huzzah 32 and the Huzzah 8266, they're being downgraded on the Python side. So, and so no support for my board either. Well, yeah, I guess, except I'll have MicroPython support. For me, the aim is MicroPython. So, yeah. It's an interesting scenario. But it still doesn't mean that I shouldn't support the form factor. Like, if I'm going to make a bigger board and have a bigger form factor, I don't think it makes any sense me designing my own form factor. So, interesting. They're about to lose their smallest moniker because they are not. Well, the extra RAMs. Hey Nathan, extra RAMs for anything. There are plenty of applications in Arduino land that you could use the extra RAM for. But yes, for like obviously MicroPython can really use it because, you know, once you've got MicroPython on the board, you're limited to. It's actually been increased. The latest version, Damien squeezed an extra 16K of RAM, but you're limited to 120 odd K, which is still stacks compared to a lot of other microcontrollers. There are plenty of microcontrollers out there with 32K of RAM or less. So 128K of RAM is a lot, but now you'll have 4 meg. TinyPICO is probably going to be $20 US. That's going to be my target price, I guess. I'm not trying to compete with the Chinese market. Yeah, but yeah, the extra RAM will be accessible through RDF or through Arduino as well. So you'll just have lots of RAM to play with. Imagine being able to write all your screen display stuff directly to RAM and then just smack it onto a screen. Could be cool. Okay, I'm running out of time. I guess I'm not going to get much more routed on this or laid out on this. as a challenge, I feel like I want to just finish this, and I think I will. Or finish it, meaning get it to the point where I can, you know, where it works. Whether I build or not, another story. That's going to be great. Who are we talking to, Brian? Me, not me. What? Counting up on the 2-hour mark for this stream. Yes, I have to stop at 9. I'm sorry, folks. Yas has to go out, so I need to go back in the house and look after the kids. And today is the last day of school holidays. No, tomorrow. No, today's Wednesday. Last day of school holidays. Kids are back at school tomorrow. Woo! I also then have the option of making custom feather wings for this that could also be used on other feathers, right? So there's a lot of cross possibility there if I finish this. When are you looking to release it? Who was that? I think James is still talking to TTD. I think. Hey, Alan. Storing images on RAM and stuff. Yeah, being able to... Yeah. There's a lot of advantages of having the extra memory. Dual Pico boards. Is there any need for dual Pico? What do you mean dual Pico? You mean more than one type of TinyPICO? What do you mean, Rob? You mean two Pico D4s on one board? Multi-processor? Is that what we're talking about? Ah, heavy now, Brian. What do you mean, Rob? James, if you're talking to me, I'm just waiting on being able to build my samples for TinyPICO, and then I can get the crowd supply campaign up soon. As soon as I can. I'm really trying, but I'm still working on hardware changes, so, you know. And super close. I mean, technically I could, so the way crowd supply works is they launch a pre-launch page first, to start getting people signing up and stuff to be notified when the launch page happens. So I could technically launch the pre-launch now and get ready, and then use the campaign time to finish off what I'm working on now. But I'd feel a lot more comfortable because it's my first campaign and it's my first properly released board that I'm going to the masses with. I'd really feel more comfortable having a fully finished working board in my hand, right? Saying like, this is the exact board. Might be black, but this is the exact board. This is what I'm shipping. I feel much more comfortable doing that than still be iterating during the campaign. Yep, multi-processor. Well, the Pico's already got multi-core, so there's already two 240 megahertz cores in the Pico. So I'm pretty sure you can't do multi-processor on any of these. The operating systems don't support it. USB host on ESP could be cool. Well, that's what Dave's doing, yes. But you're doing that as a... Well, you just said that, Dave. But that would be a feather, right? Like, I don't know if I'd put that directly onto the board. Because then you have to put an ESP... You have to put a USB port on there somewhere. Which breaks the feather format, potentially. Water cooled TinyPICO. Ha 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 ha. The marketing yet in terms of documented specs... You blurb general. Obviously, yeah, I've been putting a lot of that marketing stuff together for crowd supply. Sure. Propeller kicker. Lost me, Michael. Unless you're talking about the propeller CPU. Propeller 2 CPU. Is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about something else? I don't know. Okay, Andy's rich now. Andy's shouting everyone a trip to Hawaii. Woohoo! Right. It is a... That's what I'm saying. Like, that makes a lot of sense in... as a feather format, but obviously not on my board. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for feather and expansion. Like even being able to do PoE on an ESP32, but as a feather. A lot of leverage there, potentially. Yeah, the Parallax Propeller 2 is insane. I actually saw one demoed at the MicroPython meetup a couple of months ago. They had a Propeller 2 there, and they had some awesome stuff running on it. Insane CPU. Insane. I'm thinking more two MCUs running separate code, but with comms link for messaging. Really throwing out ideas to see if anyone bites. Well, actually, I've thought thought about that not to Picos. Like, so Adafruit are already doing that right now. They've got their SAMD boards. 3 minutes, folks. SAMD boards with a SAMD CPU on there and an ESP on there that they're using for the Wi-Fi side, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So they've got basically a SAMD board with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, like they did here with their Wi-Fi on a SAMD board. And they were doing AT stuff, but I think they're taking it a step further and using SPI bus to talk. I mean, that makes more sense than 2 TinyPICOs, personally, I think. Sorry, 2 Picos or 2 ESP32s, especially when when Espressif are coming out with new stuff soon anyway. But I'm still not sure what you would necessarily do with that. Like, I think once you talk into that space, you're better off with an FPGA and a microcontroller. I think. I don't know. And how would you, to be able to do 2 Pico D4s, you'd need 2 USB hosts, or you'd need a physical way of switching, which could get messy. You wouldn't be able to, I don't think you'd be able to switch through software. You'd need a physical connection, or at least some type of, you'd need a controller that could switch data lines that could be accessed from either core. So from either MCU. I think that would be, yeah, I don't know. That's way above my pay grade. And my pay grade is really low. Okay, folks, it's 9 o'clock. I got very little done here, unfortunately. I really wanted to do some board design on a stream. Yas has to go out. Ready? Whoa! Whoa, Yas has to go out. Wrong camera position. And I need to look after the kids. Last day of school holidays, so I'm going on daddy duty in 1 minute. Thanks all for joining. Didn't get far enough, I'm sorry, but yeah. And if you all have any more thoughts about a TinyPICO Plus or Pro, a crypto chip, hey Giuliano, crypto chip, possibly. Yeah, I don't know. That's very specific, very, very specific. I'm not sure. That would make a good feather wing, but yeah, I'm not sure. On board. If you've got any more thoughts about what could go on here, other ideas like Giuliano just had, put them in the comments. That'd be really cool. Thanks all for joining. Don't forget to like, please. If you haven't, that'd be awesome. And I will catch you all next week. Hopefully I'll have some TinyPICO boards to show. Ooh. Hopefully. We'll see how we go. Don't forget the time. Yep, I'm going now. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Oh, where's my close button? There it is.